To quickly get everyone on the same page, s&box is the spiritual successor to the game Garry's Mod. s&box is being created by Gary Newman himself and his team at Facepunch Studios. You've probably heard people liken the game to Garry's Mod 2, but for me, personally, I dislike calling s&box Garry's Mod 2 because I believe it limits people's imagination on just what s&box could be, which I'll get into in a bit. To me, s&box represents a dramatic leap in community game making and collaboration, taking all the things from games such as Roblox and Garry's Mod that work, the community-driven content creation, the ease of creating and sharing game modes and add-ons, allowing developers to earn money from their creations, so on, and then improving upon all of that. s&box seeks to create a new environment where creativity can really flourish, powered by a modified version of the Source 2 engine, which was used by Valve to create Half-Life Alyx. s&box aims to take the power of this engine and put it in the hands of the community to easily and quickly create and distribute games, mods, maps, and more. Hey everyone, I'm Fortune, and I wanted to try a different kind of video, so here we are. I would like to thank the sponsor of this video as well, Gary Newman himself. I reached out to Gary and asked if he'd be interested in sponsoring a video, and to my surprise he said yes, so big thanks. I would like to be very clear that I was not asked to say or do anything in particular about s&box by Gary or anyone else at Facepunch. This video represents my own thoughts and views on the game and its potential. But why should people care about my opinion on this? And why is it more valid than what others have said? Well, I started learning to code over 10 years ago now, and a large part of that was scripting with Garry's Mod. I created and hosted a TTT server for well over 5 years, and created tons of custom content for it. I ran numerous other servers such as DarkRP and Deathrun in that time, and I even released my own game mode on the workshop, The Hidden, which sits at 5 stars and 250,000 subscribers. So I feel very comfortable saying that I know what I'm talking about when it comes to things like Garry's Mod. Now, obviously, this does make me quite biased, so I've done my best to give in-depth reasons for the potential I see in s&box. Now, as for s&box itself, I've been working on my new project, Ghosts of the Zone, for well over a year now, making devlogs on my channel about it, and that's what's led me to making this video, as people kept asking why I would choose s&box over something like Unreal or Unity. So let's start by talking about why s&box is special. I said before that calling s&box Garry's Mod 2 limits people's imagination on what it can be, so let me clarify. Garry's Mod is a great game, but from a developer's perspective, it is quite limited in what it can achieve. Almost every game mode in Garry's Mod is some kind of first-person shooter, and there's a reason for that. From a coding perspective, almost fundamentally, the player you control in Garry's Mod is a walking first-person character. Now, you can break outside this limitation, but the extent of what you can reach outside of this small subset of games is much less extensive than in a proper engine. Networking, prediction, the player's camera, weapons, many things are very difficult to adjust and implement for anything other than the expected first-person experience. But wait, you say, I've played game modes that weren't first person. Well, my poor unenlightened friend, let's take a look, shall we? Melon Bomber appears to be a top-down game mode. You move around and place bombs like in the game Bomberman. However, this is a trick. You've been bamboozled. Take it for a fool. If we do a little magic in the console and run a funny little command, you'll notice something odd. As you can see, even here, we're still technically in first-person shooter mode. This may not seem like an obvious limitation to a layman, but shit gets real hard to implement real fast if you try and make anything drastically outside of the FPS bubble. Even when you're a spectator in something like TTT, you're just an invisible player entity flying around with no clip. By the way, for any admins watching this, if you ignite yourself while in spectator mode and then spectate someone, they'll take the burn damage. Have fun. So, when people call s&box Garry's Mod 2, I worry that they're limiting themselves in what they think s&box can be, because s&box doesn't have this limitation. You can think of it like this. Imagine that this little box represents all the possible games that can be made in Garry's Mod. First person, top down, whatever you can think of. Now this box, this is what s&box can make. Now, I assume you're already familiar with Garry's Mod style game modes, so instead let's do a quick dive into the many diverse game modes that are already available in the s&box developer preview, shall we? Unicycle Frenzy is the name of this game, a sort of rage bait, quap, Happy Wheels kind of feel. This isn't even me playing in the footage. One of the developers recorded this for me because I must have died about a dozen times in the tutorial alone. It's really, really hard, and there are a bunch of maps that'll look fantastic. Speedruns of this game are going to be insane as well. I mean, look at this one. This is 9 months old, and look at him go. Anyway, I expect to see this a lot on Twitch when s&box launches. Next game, Jumper. Now, you remember this guy, the one who made streamers go like... Well, imagine that, but instead of this guy, you have this guy. And it's multiplayer. Also, there's little frog guys. Similar to the last game mode, I fucking suck at this one as well. For anyone wanting to try for themselves, I wish you luck. I don't know if anyone's made it to the top so far, at least not that I've seen. I'm sure someone's going to clown on me saying that someone actually has made it to the top, but as far as I know, it's a mystery. And this one's called Hidden. But I came up with the Hidden. I was the first. Don't look at that. You know, my game mode probably wouldn't have a broken knife. Or like broken textures. And yeah, I think my blood effects probably looked cooler than that too, actually. And yeah, you know, like this one's pretty cool. This is called Block Party or Budget Boy or Arcade. I don't know. There's like 3 different names for it. You're a little guy and you have to dodge these blocks, and you have to tap them on the sides and bottom and top. And the more you do that, the harder it gets, but the more points you get. This is I'm starting to sense a pattern here with these difficult games. This one's called Mazing, and it's another Face Punch made game. You kind of control a little guy and you gotta dive through a dungeon and try and get to the lowest floor you can. You gotta find the key and then get to the trapdoor while avoiding these guys at the same time. It's pretty simple, but it gets quite intense in the later floors. Of course, if you die, you go back to floor 1. Because I think Face Punch just hates you and really wants you to suffer. I haven't tried this game mode before. It's called Rock, Paper, Scissors. Maybe you play Rock, Paper, Scissors against other people. Okay. Alright, sure. Yeah. Yeah, as you can see, we've got the rock versus scissors and paper right now. It's quite intense. Scissors appears to be taking the lead. Oh, no, Rock's making a solid comeback. Oh, yep. Scissors definitely looks like scissors have been eliminated. I think it's all over for Rock. It is paper after all. They don't have a way to defeat that. You can see them sort of cowering in a corner. Yep. That's going to be a win for paper. Fantastic game mode. 10 out of 10. There's a full-on RTS game mode where you have to collect beer and rocks for your workforce to build an army of Terrys to defeat the other players. And this is their build animation for when they're building. There's pool, where you play pool. Not really sure what to say about pool. I mean, yeah, there's, you see some lovely ball-on-ball action. That didn't come out right. Fucking Roblox, I guess. This one's called Revolver Roulette. There's one bullet, and someone has it, and no one knows who. This one's called Bad Apple. Maybe it's like, maybe it's based on the music video or something. I don't know what I expected, to be honest. The ever-classic Game of Life by Conway. Fun fact, Conway actually hated that he was most known for the Game of Life and considers it one of his weakest achievements in mathematics because he was actually quite a brilliant mathematician. This is a fun little one called Castle Defenders, where you have to defend against waves of depraved Terrys who are looking to murder you. It's a classic tower defense, build towers, upgrade them, all that kind of shit. Yeah, I thought we'd try something new, so we're going to do a live reaction to this game mode. You know, I'm really excited to try it out. This one looked pretty interesting. I see, it's, yeah, it's looking pretty complicated. There's a lot of mechanics here. Okay, you can't fall off the throw back, Terry. God damn. Derek. You need some broccoli in you. Oh shit, no. Anyway, hopefully it's clear just how much variety s&box is offering, and this isn't even everything. A lot of the game modes I actually wanted to show off are currently broken, and if I showed off everything, we'd be here all day. All of these games exist in the closed access version of s&box. Just imagine what's going to get made when the community gets their hands on it. The potential is limitless. Something else that is really incredible about all the official game modes Face Punch has made is that they're open source. If you want to make something similar, you can just use one of their incredibly polished game modes as a launch platform to go right into making what you want. But it doesn't stop there. You can create add-ons for different game modes as well, just like in GMod, and those can be loaded up and combined as you please. You can even make map-specific add-ons, so you can write code directly into your maps. Remember VScript and how everyone was excited about that? This is basically that, but you have the entirety of the sandbox engine to work with. So, with that little prepper out of the way, let's talk about why s&box will succeed. If it isn't obvious already, I really like s&box and have high hopes for it. For anyone who isn't sold already, I'd like to point out a couple of reasons that I'm confident s&box will be successful. One, Facepunch has done this before. This isn't some optimistic fan sequel to GMod with unknown and untested developers. This is made by the exact same people who worked on GMod, with Gary Newman himself as the lead. They're not some big megacorp that is only in it for the money. I mean, the CEO of Facepunch constantly tweets about his love of taking big shits. They're very much making this because it's something they want to make and because they have faith in the project. They're aware of the improvements that could be made to a GMod style development environment and have some of the most talented people I've ever engaged with working on the project. 2. Facepunch is in it for the long haul. If there's one thing I trust Facepunch to do, it is stick with a game that they believe in. GMod has received active support for well over 16 years now, and their other large game, Rust, has received concept updates for about 10. This is despite the very mixed reception both games had on launch. GMod had a lot of naysayers back in the day, and Rust had the lion's share of critics when it came to open world games. Rust was even rewritten almost entirely from the ground up a year after it first launched. It requires a lot of dedication to stick to a project after something like that. I believe when it comes down to it, s&box will have the support it needs to survive and thrive. This is not to say it's a guarantee that s&box will be an instant success. It might actually have quite a rough launch, much like Rust did, but it means I trust Facepunch to ensure their artistic vision is seen through. 3. We know the formula works. Similar games such as Roblox and GMod are amazingly successful, in spite of the limitations on the developers. Roblox in particular impresses me with what the creators make despite such an off-putting aesthetic. s&box wishes to do more than these games could ever achieve, with more freedom and more modern game development tools and amazing community tools. You will have access to the full suite of tools that Valve used to create Half-Life Alyx, with a modern animation graph, model importers, material creators, and more. 4. It's closer to the real industry-standard game development environment. s&box uses C# for its programming language, which is the same language that the Unity game engine uses. In fact, I'd say s&box has more in common with a standalone game engine like Unity than it does something like GMod or Roblox. There's 2 benefits to this. Developers who learn in s&box can navigate to other platforms more easily than if they had spent their time in something like Roblox or GMod. Developers who spent time in something like Unity will very easily be able to adapt to and utilize the s&box environment. The benefits of this, I feel, have gone rather unnoticed. I have not seen any other videos on s&box that elucidate this idea, but I think it will have a substantial impact on both the longevity and reach of s&box. It means creators in similar situations to myself, growing up and learning to program alongside s&box, will be well placed to enter the gaming industry or even create standalone titles within s&box itself. And the same is true for industry veterans looking to make something in s&box. Their repertoire of skills will slot nicely into making something within the new environment. 5. s&box wants to allow creators to earn money on their creations. Now, I have no idea what this will look like, and I don't want to speculate and cause undue drama. The details are all up in the air right now, but Facepunch are actively looking at ways to allow developers to make money from using the s&box platform, which is a huge incentive to making good games in the s&box environment. 6. There's a huge focus on multiplayer. This one is only really going to seem like a big deal if you're a developer, but multiplayer is very tightly integrated into the s&box workflow. Creating a multiplayer game mode is extremely easy, and adding on top of that, making networked and predicted variables is sleek and intuitive. While you would expect most game engines to support this, Unity only got a first-party add-on for multiplayer games in 2022, and it's not even complete, not to mention the numerous abandoned attempts from previous years. Before now, you had to rely on third-party add-ons to create a multiplayer experience in Unity. Other engines are better. Unreal, for instance, natively supports multiplayer, but Unreal multiplayer is complicated and rather esoteric. s&box's ease of access makes it much quicker to just jump in and make something you want. On top of that, there's even Twitch integration. You can directly integrate your game modes with Twitch, offering support for the biggest streaming platform, and making games intended to be played for and by streamers. That's not to say you have to make a multiplayer game either. You can still absolutely make single-player experiences that are self-contained and highly playable. It's just that the multiplayer integration is really good. Alright, this list is getting a bit long, so let's move on to another important question. Why should I use s&box instead of something like Unreal or Unity? This is a fair question, happen, and is definitely not something you can just write off. In all likelihood, if you're working in a team and looking to create something unique and different, by all means, use a standalone engine. However, if you're an individual or small team looking to create a highly customizable and moddable experience, s&box might be a good option. Distributing your game mode on s&box couldn't be easier. I mean, you get a goddamn install wizard to walk your baby ass through the upload process, and then boom, other people can play your game. s&box supports dedicated servers, so hosting is simple as well. You can just click several buttons to launch a server, and it all works like magic. I just realized I haven't even mentioned Asset Party yet. You can upload models, sounds, materials, and shaders, etc. for others to use on Asset Party, and then they can simply implement them in their game modes and maps. You literally drag and drop assets from the cloud while making a map, and it just downloads the model and it shows up in the game automatically. I mean, what the fuck? And remember, this is all early access shit. By all means, this will simply get better with time, and the experience will improve more and more as s&box grows and matures. I know this sounds too good to be true, so what's the catch? The biggest issue, really, is that s&box needs to be finished first. All this potential means nothing if the game doesn't reach it, and you don't get brownie points for promises. There's also still a lot of work to be done that could make the development experience even better. For instance, where the fuck are my server RPCs, Gary? Remember when you said it'd take like a week? Shaders remain hard to utilize as there's no shader graph. As I was writing the script for this section, Facepunch just added their first commit about a shader graph in the works, so you're welcome. And probably the most worrying issue s&box has right now is optimization. The game doesn't run very well right now, but Facepunch are actively working on fixing that. Another one is that the only player model that comes with the base game right now is this silly little guy. Okay, so I'd already written this part of the script, and then Facepunch revealed a new realistic player model. I think this was a lot of people's biggest hang-up about the potential of s&box, so easy peasy. There's also no confirmation at this point if s&box will allow standalone games using the engine, as that's a licensing issue that has to go through Valve, but Facepunch have said it's looking promising based on what Valve has said so far. This does mean that for the time being, creating a game with something like a centralized matchmaking service, while currently possible, is definitely more convoluted than it would be otherwise. To conclude, honestly, it kinda does seem too good to be true, but my experience with and investigations into s&box leads me to believe it will be huge for gaming as a whole. I mean, I really hope s&box brings about a new community-driven attitude towards games and game making and ignites a new era of collaboration. I've wanted to make this kind of video for a while to really enumerate and articulate the potential I see in s&box. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe. If you're feeling extra generous, my Patreon is in the description below. And for those of you wondering and waiting on the more devlogs, rest assured they're on their way. I've made tons of progress since my last video, but I wanted to add a bit more polish to them as well as some new features before I make the next video. Hopefully, should be soon. Of course, everything's slowed down because of Christmas, but we should be back on track now. Enjoy the new year, everybody, and I'll see you next time.